Hello, my name is Andrew Smith. I teach at University in Tennessee, Public University in Tennessee, and I work with two associations, the United Campus Workers, which is a higher education union affiliated with the Communication Workers of America, and I also am my campus chapter president for the American Association of University Professors, and we advocate for all the faculty on our campus. I'm not speaking officially in any capacity today. I'm not officially speaking for my unions or for my school, by far, not officially doing anything really, but I've been following as a citizen, as a member of the state of Tennessee who pays taxes and votes and has a driver's license and owns a home, that kind of thing. I'm following several bills that are in our higher education committees and legislature proposed to go into law this year. And there's been a few bills that are a part of the nationwide critical race theory panic that I've been watching. And one of those actually failed in committee yesterday. But the way the whole thing went down, I think it's really worthy to report on. And I'm giving these short little live streams. And then I'm also I've got my remarks typed up, which I'll be sharing on my various social media pages as well. So yesterday, on Tuesday, the 22nd of February, in the Higher Education Subcommittee, Representative Robin Smith, she is a Republican, was there to kind of lead the discussion on what's been called the Certain Tenets Bill, Tenets, Certain Tenets Bill. And it did not, I believe it was House Bill 2417, did not make it out of committee yesterday. She said that this bill was supposed to be, in her words, a hand-in-glove partner to the Divisive Concepts Bill, which did succeed in that committee just the week before. And it's supposed to come up today at 3:30 p.m. in the Education Administration Committee. So the Divisive Concepts Bill did pass, but the Certain Tenets Bill, which is was up yesterday, did not make it. This bill was, to paraphrase a colleague of mine, so fundamentally bad that it could not even accomplish the bad that it planned to do. And we're grateful for that. But unlike the Representative Gantt-led discussion of the Divisive Concepts Bill 1 week ago, this presentation yesterday felt more aggressive, like a full court press. I was pleasantly amazed and shocked to see the bill backfire, but I think we need to understand the principled panic and meanness that we saw at work yesterday, as it is an extension of all the ways in our country right now that white Christian nationalism is dominating discourse, especially here in our region in the South at the state and local level here in Tennessee. This is an ever-present and existential threat to our profession as university instructors, especially for engaged academics in the humanities. And that's because my professional training is engaged. I don't leave my values or my morals or my training at the door, and I've been trained in a particularly engaged kind of scholarship. Representative Smith said that House Bill 2417 was meant to go with 2670 to fight this alleged bogeyman of ideology. And whenever they say ideology, it is so striking to me because everything that they're doing is visibly and virulently ideological. Smith introduced yesterday, and this was new compared to the week before, and this is one of the things that I found so disturbing about yesterday, some expert testimony from a new nonprofit that advocates diversity of viewpoints in higher learning. And this Tennessee-based nonprofit had just released a report. And at first I'm thinking, wait, they brought an expert witness? Well, of course they brought an expert witness. And her name was Susan Kestner, and the name of her organization, and get this, it's the Velocity Convergence. The Velocity Convergence. The Velocity Convergence, what a name, is anxious about what they perceive as, quote, the lack of intellectual, ideological, and political diversity in public institutions of higher ed. They accuse universities of being guilty of the following. They say, quote, we promote professional adherence, targeted hiring, and promotions to be bestowed on those who pledge allegiance to radical partisan ideology. They further charge that, quote, faculties which have been marching ever more leftward for decades have now reached a critical mass, which is creating an environment detrimental to students and the advancement of critical thought, end quote. Working at an institution, as I do, with a strong conservative bias in its administration, I cannot help but wonder what in the world they are talking about. It is not just here at my school, but in many public university systems across the country and in this region that conservative politicians, in fact, already control the boards and executive branches of these institutions. It turns out that Kessner, in collaboration with other conservatives, has just published a report about how the dangers of what they like to call critical social justice has gone in Tennessee higher education. This report that they put out garnered the juicy headline, quote, Tennessee lawmakers consider bills to ban parts of left-wing indoctrination in public colleges, end quote, over at thefederalist.com. Kessner, in severe tones, cited author Ibram X. Kendi in a highly disparaging manner, called out social justice that she called wokeism. This bill would be a roadblock to these woke justice CRT enemies who believe, she says that we believe, those of us who participate in anti-racist work, that we believe, quote unquote, two wrongs make a right, end quote. For those of us familiar with Kendi's anti-racist work, it is not outrageous as they describe. Kendi was invoked again later in the end of the discussion, once again as an example about how horrible anti-racism is. That is the underlying message in this presentation yesterday, and that is the underlying message across right-wing America. Anti-racism is more racist than racism. That's what they believe, that anti-racism is more racist than racism. So what they said follows from that message, and they said, quote, Tennesseans are concerned and we should be preemptive about this. Representative Smith took special aim at the University of Tennessee and wants to defund their alleged $2 million budget for CRT. Apparently, the University of Tennessee Knoxville campus is sort of the nexus of CRT in Tennessee. And at last week's Higher Ed Committee, it was speculated how this Knoxville being a hotbed for CRT, how that squares with Governor Lee's proposed patriotism think tank, which he proposes will also be housed at the University of Tennessee. Representative Smith kept trying to frame this bill as an extension of the Civil Rights Bill. This is the historic federal Civil Rights Bill from the 1960s. This is amazing. This is the Orwellian extent of this panic because they're invoking civil rights to shut down civil rights education. That's what they want to do. They want to use the idea of civil rights to shut down civil rights education. The GOP is trying to reinterpret and weaponize the Civil Rights Act against the so-called left. They're worked up about the alleged and hypothetical adverse event that could happen where students would be compelled by their professors to say or do something that contradicts conservative values. Representative Smith is concerned that students would be compelled to endorse certain views on, quote, privilege, which I think by which she means that nobody should ever admit that race-based privilege exists. She says this new bill is the remedy at the state level, claiming that this bill is viewpoint agnostic, which, of course, it is not. Representative Baum, who I talked about last week, who's a Republican and a professor, actually pushed back against the severe language of the bill. He asked a straightforward question of Representative Smith. He said, would this bill make it easier for a student to sue a professor? And she said, yes, it would. Representative Cochran, in his comments, said that this is about CRT or whatever we specifically want to call it. And I didn't realize it at first, but I have a hunch that maybe even the Republicans are growing weary about the hypervigilance of this panic. Representative Smith said that Kastner believes that all of 11 public universities in Tennessee, they have all hired an administrator to promote CRT. And what they've done is they've taken multicultural affairs or diversity, education, and inclusion offices, and they've sort of folded this in and just assumed that anything that hires a person of color or a female or promotes diversity is somehow embedded in this CRT, conspiracy. So any university level work for diversity, equity, inclusion can now be demonized as an inherent evil. So once again, this bill is invoking civil rights to damage civil rights. I was really taken aback, pleasantly so, to see the Republicans provide lots of pushback on this bill. My hunch is that their intrinsic libertarian sensibilities were disturbed by the bill's draconian overreach, seeing how this kind of legislation can cut both ways. In their comments, some would say, I am a conservative Republican, to show their bona fides to the representatives pushing this thing, but then they had a but. They seem to have a but this goes too far. Representative Smith was not just worried about CRT, she was also worried about LGBTQ, etc. initiatives that she believed this bill would help them fight against efforts to, quote, reconstruct the family, reconstruct gender, and, quote, the encroachment of activism into the classroom. This really bothers her, obviously, because she says that people who are engaged faculty, which I'm an engaged faculty, is teaching discrimination. So once again, she thinks that the left wants to cure racism with more racism. I cannot underestimate or understate the incredible sigh of relief that I had when I saw that this bill failed and died in committee. And it was a 6-2 vote on an amendment that was supposedly the actual bill was in the amendment. And I don't understand all the nuances of how they do these things. But clearly, this bill was too aggressive. And all of the think tank kind of, veneer of conspiracy and anxiety that they cloak this thing in, at least in this one particular bill, this particular committee yesterday, it backfired. And that's got to be seen as a victory for education and educators in higher ed here in Tennessee. Thank you very much. I'm Andrew Smith. Thanks for listening to my update. And there's going to be another committee today at 3:30, so I'll continue to be following these and providing updates. Hopefully I can throughout this legislative season. Thank you for listening to my live stream.